It's called, literally translates as star wound. When the Department of Defense dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those bombs didn't fall and strike the ground and explode. They were blown up in the atmosphere. The largest hydrogen bomb ever tested by the U.S. back in the 1950s was called Bravo, 20 megatons.
I have a Patreon, and I give everybody, they're the reason I'm here, they're the reason you're here. They're our top supporters, and so I give them an opportunity to ask the guest a question. So this is from Dylan.
Okay.
And Dylan wants to know, here's his question. What were some of the hypothesized steps that our surviving ancestors took to survive a 20 to 30 degrees Celsius environmental temperature change and build back a new society?
Okay, I don't know of temperature change that extreme, although we're looking at some very extreme. I mean, we're looking at 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, which would be about 18 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Mm-hmm. But that's way beyond anything we've experienced in recent times.
Yeah.
Coming out of the Little Ice Age 150 to 200 years ago, temperature of the planet has warmed about a degree. So we're looking at warming of 20 times that much. And some of the studies based on ice cores, Greenland ice cores, Antarctic ice cores, other kinds of proxy evidence, the time span in which this temperature change occurred has gone from 1,000 years to a century, then from a century to a decade, then from a decade to 5 years, and now the latest, as we get to this ever more refined temporal resolution, like from the studies of ice cores, it's down to 1 to 3 years. So what happened? That's a mystery. Now, what did people do? That's a very interesting question to me. Like, you need to find a place of refuge to ride this thing out, because at the same time these extreme temperature changes are happening, the whole surface of the planet is being remodeled in a major way. So one of the things that would absolutely be necessary is to find the places of refuge. Now, in ecologists, when they look at the decimation of a whole ecosystem, like a great microcosm of that would be the Mount St. Helens eruption of 1980, when you had about 200 square miles just utterly decimated, turned into a lunar landscape. Well, you've got biologists and ecologists and stuff have been studying how nature has reclaimed that. And what usually happens is you have these pockets where some seeds or whatever, spores primarily, because the first colonizer plants that show up in the aftermath of catastrophe are ferns. And so this is what happened. You have these pockets of life recovering, and then from those little islands of life, of biological activity, it spreads out. And at the rate that it's been recovering, about it's been, 40 years now since that big eruption. And it's probably, there's now forests encroaching upon the area of devastation. Give it another 50 to 100 years and it should be completely recovered. Now, the question is, if we're faced, because to me, two questions. One, the historical question, because we now know that these tremendous catastrophes have happened and have happened repeatedly. So, and then if they happen again, for example, we know that asteroid and cometary impacts are way more frequent than anybody was imagining a generation ago. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse today. But interestingly, what we've seen in the last 25, 30 years is that geologists looking at the Earth down below have seen multiple scars from these tremendous cosmic events, impacts of asteroids and meteors, comets and cometary debris. There's right now about 200 craters and or astroblems that have been discovered. Now, an astrobleme is an impact scar, but it's usually buried beneath the surface It's called, literally translates as star wound. Star wound. Now, most of those are the result of high-density objects like iron asteroids. Have you ever been to the crater in Arizona near Winslow?
I haven't.
Okay, add that to your list. You need to get out there and see it. This is. You'll get out there and you're going to be looking in this 600-foot deep hole, a kilometer wide, and you're going to go, that's one big hell of a big hole, right? But that was like a little baby piece of cosmic debris that excavated that hole. It was an iron asteroid about 150 feet in diameter, right? Most of the asteroid pulverized upon impact, and pieces of it are strewn out for miles from the crater itself. In the museum there, you can see there's a hunk of the iron that's maybe about like so big, Now, when you have a high density, and we're talking, 5 or 6 grams per cubic centimeter, when you have a high density object like that coming in at hypervelocity speeds, it'll penetrate through the whole atmosphere and strike the ground. Now, if you have a lower density object, like, say, have you ever heard of the Tunguska event of 1908?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so in 1908, a piece of a comet, it was probably related to the comet we called Comet Encke, which was probably part of a family of meteors called the Taurid meteor shower, which the Earth crosses this stream twice each year. Okay, so that piece is estimated to have been about 150 feet in diameter. So now, on the one hand, the hole you've got in Arizona, the big crater bowl that you've got in the desert in Arizona, was created by, like, almost think about it, cast iron, and roughly the density and weight of cast iron. The Tunguska event, on the other hand, was more like almost like a snowball. But when that thing came in, again at hypervelocity speeds, it penetrated the atmosphere. It happened on June, by the Gregorian calendar, it would have been June 30th in 1908. That thing descended through the atmosphere, but was moving so fast that the atmosphere, in effect, didn't have time to get out of the way. The lower density of it meant that, like when the Department of Defense dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those bombs didn't fall and strike the ground and explode. They were blown up in the atmosphere. Why? Because you've got a greater kill radius. You've got a greater radius of destruction. Whereas if it hits the ground, most of that energy is absorbed into the ground. And the blast wave, if you detonate it in the atmosphere, that blast wave can move out much more to a greater distance. So Tunguska 1908 exploded 5 miles up in the atmosphere with the force of about a 15 megaton hydrogen bomb. The largest hydrogen bomb ever tested by the U.S. back in the 1950s was called Bravo, 20 megatons, right? So this is almost in the range of the biggest hydrogen bomb that the U.S. Department of Defense ever tested, right? As a result of that explosion, over 820 square miles of old-growth taiga forest was just utterly obliterated and flattened. Under the epicenter of that explosion, about 200 square miles were just incinerated to nothing, right? Now we have two contrasting episodes there. Now one, we have an iron asteroid strikes the Earth. We have a low-density object, probably a piece of a comet, blows up in the atmosphere, right? Now, the reason we know about the Tunguska event of 1908 is because of two things: the devastation, but also the accounts that this is a very remote region of Siberia, northwest of Lake Baikal, very remote region, and so the Tungusi tribes people that live there were reindeer herders, and as far as we know, there was nobody killed directly by the blast because it was just at the northern limits of the tree line. If it had been much farther, maybe another 50 miles north or 100 miles north, we wouldn't have known about it. The reason we know about it is because, number one, even though this was very remote, when this happened in 1908, there was still accounts that made their way out. And a scientist, a Russian scientist by the name of Leonid Kulik, he was studying meteoritic phenomena, and he heard about this. And he decided he wanted to follow up on this. So I think it was 1927 or 1928, he journeyed to this small village, Vanavara, I think is what it was called. It was the closest human habitation to this event. And he found out, they confirmed, there was this thing, but they were very superstitious about it. They did not want any outsiders to go there because they felt like it had been a visitation from the fire god Agni. And they witnessed this thing from the distance, and it completely, they were so blown away by what happened. And then, of course, some of them traveled in but the only thing that was probably killed in mass was reindeer herds. So some of the reindeer herders had gone up looking for their reindeer, and of course they could find no trace of them. They'd been just incinerated and obliterated.
So did this explode in the air?
It exploded in the air.
Okay.
Exploded about 5 miles up. So that's a major difference between these two.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.